वेदांत स्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय
जय।
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय।
जय
इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय
नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की जय।
जय
प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय।
जय
श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय।
जय
वृंदावन धाम की जय।
जय
नवद्वीप धाम मायापुर धाम की जय।
जय
गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय।
जय
तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय।
जय
समवेद भक्त वृंद की जय।
जय
गौर प्रेमानंदे।
हरि हरि बोल।
All glories to assembled devotees.
Hare
हरे
Krishna.
कृष्णा
All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा
All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol.
बोल हरि बोल।
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवान प्रचारणी निर्विशेष धन्यवादी पार्षद देश। नमो विष्णु महाराज।
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
ओम
Om
नमो
Namo
भगवते
Bhagavate
वासुदेवाय।
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
ओम
Om
नमो
Namo
भगवते वासुदेवाय।
Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. If we could have the devotees chant the Sanskrit to save my voice here.
Okay, Prabhu, I will do that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So today we are reading Canto 1, Chapter 17, and text number 20, and I will recite 3 times, and then you can recite it, please. Aprataраkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nischayah atranurupam rajarshe vimrashva manishaya. Aprataраkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nischayah atranurupam rajarshe vimrashva manishaya. Aprataраkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nischayah atranurupam rajarshe vimrash swamanishaya. Please recite.
अप्रतर्क्याद् अनिर्देश्याद् इति केष्वपि निश्चया अत्रानुरूपं राजर्षे विमृशस्व मनीषया।
Apratarkyad anirdesyad iti keshvapi nischaya atra nurupam rajarshe vimrisha svamanishaya.
अप्रत्रक्याद् अनिर्देश्यात् इति केष्वपि निश्चया अत्रानुरूपं राजर्षि विमृशा स्वमनीषया। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Mata Sutapa.
No, Mataji, go ahead.
Apratarkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nischaya atranurupam rajarshe vimrisha swamanishaya.
Hare Krishna. Apratarkyad anirdesyad iti keshvapi nischayaya atranurupam rajarshe vimrasha swamanishaya.
Anyone else? Okay. Go to the word for word. If anyone would like to do the word for word. You'll start the
I can do, Prabhu,
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
unless somebody else wants to.
Please go. You can do.
Apratarkhyat, beyond the power of reasoning. Anirdeshyat, beyond the power of thinking. Iti, thus, Keshu, someone. Api, also. Nishchayaha, definitely concluded. Atra, herein. Anurupam, which of them is right? Rajarshe, O sage amongst the kings. Vimrisha, judge yourself. Swa, by your own. Munishaya, power of intelligence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You want to say again? Mikey's going to read. What am I reading? The purport? The translation of purport. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Translation. There are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by, is this?
You can read it here as well.
I'll start again. There are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage amongst kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your own intelligence. Purport. The Vaishnavites, the devotees of the Lord, do believe, as above explained, that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. He is the Supreme Director, for he confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he, as all-pervading Paramatma, stays in everyone's heart and keeps vigilance over all actions and witnesses all activities. The argument of the atheist that one cannot be punished for one's misdeeds unless proved before a qualified justice is refuted herein. For we accept the perpetual witness and constant companion of the living being. A living being may forget all that he might have done in his past or present life, but one must know that in the same tree of the material body, the individual soul and the supreme soul as Paramatma are sitting like two birds. One of them, the living being, is enjoying the fruits of the tree, whereas the supreme being is there to witness the activities. Therefore, the Paramatma feature, the supreme soul, is actually the witness of all activities of the living being, and only by his direction can the living being remember or forget what he might have done in the past. He is, therefore, both the all-pervading impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma in everyone's heart. He is the knower of all past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. The devotees know this in truth, and therefore they discharge their duties sincerely without being overly anxious for rewards. Okay. Besides that, one cannot estimate the Lord's reactions, either by speculation or by scholarship. Why does he put some into difficulty and not others? He is the supreme knower of the Vedic knowledge, and thus he is the factual Vedantist. At the same time, he is the compiler of Vedanta. No one is independent of him, and everyone is engaged in his service in different ways. In the conditioned state, such services are rendered by the living being under force of the material nature, whereas in the liberated state, the living being is helped by the spiritual nature in the voluntary loving service of the Lord. There is no incongruity or inebriety in his actions. All are on the path of absolute truth. Bhishma Dev correctly estimated the inconceivable actions of the Lord. The conclusion is, therefore, that the sufferings of the representative of religion and the representative of the earth, as present before Maharaj Parikshit, were planned to prove that Maharaj Parikshit was the ideal executive head because he knew well how to give protection to the cows, the earth, and the brahmanas, religious principles, the two pillars of spiritual advancement. Everyone is under the full control of the Lord. He is quite correct in his action when he desires something to be done by someone, irrespective of the consideration of the particular case. Can you move it up? Maharaj Parikshit was thus put to test for his greatness. Now let us see how he solves it by his sagacious mind, excuse me. Haribol.
Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vikasha Swami Iti Namaste. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namaste. Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachalini Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desyatarini. Hare Krishna devotees, thank you for helping me here today. I'm just feeling a little bit sick with a sore throat, so I'm going to keep this, the points that I'm making, somewhat brief and try to open up the conversation for discussion amongst the devotees so that we can look at this verse. And I just want to first ask permission and blessings from the senior devotees and all of the Vaishnavas so that I can say something, and please forgive me for any incorrections or offenses or anything wrong that I may say. Hare Krishna. So in this verse, we're seeing this chapter, actually, we're seeing this the personality of Kali and the personality of religion. And we're understanding, so this Srimad Bhagavatam is the lighthouse in this dark age of Kali. And so we have this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is giving us the direction and the guidance so that we can understand the purpose of our life and the valuable nature of the human life that we have, and to avoid the mistakes that we are prone to fall into with our human bodies. We'll see very soon here that in this chapter that Parikshit is giving Kali 5 places, 5 places to stay. Does anyone, we're foreshadowing a bit, but can anyone remember the 5 places that we'll see that Kali has the ability to stay in Kali Yuga? Can anyone mention those 5 places?
Where there is alcohol, where animals are slaughtered.
Where intoxication takes place,
Intoxication.
where illicit sex takes place, and where gold is hoarded.
Yes, that's very good. Specifically, it's stated that Parikshit is giving Kali permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter are performed. And in addition, where gold is stored, because wherever there's gold, there's falsity, intoxication, lust, envy, and enmity. Now we can see practically in this modern culture that we are part of, that's basically all over the world. Everywhere we look, we can see that there is darkness. This is the age of Kali, is the age of darkness. And we can see that there is darkness everywhere. But actually, we have become accustomed to the darkness. So we think that this darkness is light in the normal conditioned state, of course. When we come in touch with the Srimad Bhagavatam and compassionate teachers such as Srila Prabhupada, we can start to have the light opened up and we can see things clearly for what they are. But we can notice that this modern culture is like a fool's paradise. And under the guise of what they're calling freedom, actually we're under so much control, and the control is dominating every aspect of our life. And in this chapter, we see that there was a low-class Shudra in the dress of a king. And this is the position that we also are finding ourselves in we're being controlled by leaders who are actually, from the perspective of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are thieves and rogues. And it doesn't matter in whatever leader party we are identifying with or whatever it is. Actually, it is thieves are rogues. And the reason why is because they're not giving the proper homage to the owner of everything, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we're also finding ourselves in this position now of being controlled by these Shudra kings. And in this society, we can never find true peace or happiness in a place where the owner is being robbed, taken from, exploited. And we see this here, and this is kind of leading into the point of this verse. I mean, the major aspect of this verse, which is, the cause of distress. And so what the personality of religion is saying is, evaluate this and look at this cause of distress for yourself and understand it. And Srila Prabhupada makes so many wonderful points in the purport, and a lot of it is centered around this idea of, what are the atheists saying about distress? And this distress is usually, it's misunderstood where distress is coming from. And so a few points we can look at in relation to distress from the conditioned place, and also distress from the position of being in Krishna consciousness, because it's two very different things, although it may appear the same. There's a big difference between the devotee's distress and the materialist's distress. So in the normal conditioned state, before we look at the normal conditioned state, we can establish that the position is that we are the cause of our own distress. And from a very basic level, the laws of karma, the natural factual laws of karma, state that there's reaction to the actions, and the fruits will come either good or bad. And just another point in this regard that's made in the verse, there's the super soul and there's the Paramatma, the supreme soul, that is the companion, the eternal companion, and the Jivatma, the the jiva has this companion, and the jiva is attempting to enjoy in this, it's in the Upanishad, it's described as, two birds in a tree. And the jiva is trying to enjoy the fruit of the tree, and the other bird is watching. So we are the smaller bird trying to enjoy in the conditioned state. And then the fruit that we are enjoying is either enjoying or causing distress. And so what happens is we don't understand where the distress in life is coming from. So we have a perennial question that some people who have a little bit of awakened intelligence start to ask this question. And this is, why do bad things happen to good people? And for the most part, the materialists don't have much of an answer to this question. And it's also a question that's used for the atheist perspective to say that there is no God. Because how can God allow bad things to happen to good people? But we have in the Srimad Bhagavatam and also in the Bhagavad Gita a clear answer for this. And anyone who has the willingness to look and explore will find that there's a clear answer, which is that bad things happen to good people because it is the result of their own past activities. And it is a fair and just system in that whatever we do, we get the result, bad or good. And just any materialist or anyone being a spiritual person or not can recognize and realize that justice is good. To have justice is good. So, because of course, the court systems, there's justice. People want, someone to be tried for a crime that they commit. In the same way, the Supreme Court is always watching. The Supreme Court, and I don't mean the Supreme Court of the United States, I mean the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always perceiving and evaluating and giving all of us the results of our activities. So the distress that we are experiencing is coming from the results of what we have done. This is somewhat of a tough pill to swallow, especially if we are dealing with the results ourselves, in the sense that we might not want to accept, or that we are the cause of all of our pain and suffering in life. Usually what happens is Krishna will provide some kind of instrument in the form of so many different things that will deliver us the fruit or the cause in the form of distress. And what we will do is we'll put the blame and the suffering, we'll put the blame for the suffering on the instrument. We'll say, this person's doing this to us, this person is doing that to us. And this is a very dangerous way to think, because first of all, it's false. It's not correct. If someone is doing something that is seemingly causing us distress and we are experiencing that distress, actually it's our own relationship to what's happening and our own karma that has caused that distress in our life. So we're just mistakenly, there's the saying, don't kill the messenger. It's sort of like that, or, don't. But there's another piece to this that's very dangerous for us in this type of mentality when we put the blame on the others who are causing the distress, is that it's also said, and I don't know the exact verse, but it's certainly there, that what we meditate on, we become. Like, the mentality is formed by the object of the meditation. So it's like a circular situation where we end up, when we look at flaws in others that are causing some perceived distress in us, actually those flaws will start to manifest in our own consciousness. Actually, for me, when I first came into Krishna consciousness, this point of meditating, of not meditating on the wrongs of others, was a very powerful realization for me. Like when I saw that was causing me to then manifest those qualities, it made a really distinct change in my way I thought about myself and about others. And I really have tried to overcome that propensity to try to meditate on others' flaws, because I can recognize that those flaws will then manifest within me, and which is ultimately another cause of distress, because it's like it turns into a cycle and a circular situation. But the ultimate cause of distress for the living entity, these are all kind of byproducts of the ultimate cause of distress, which is that we have turned away from Krishna. We have turned away from the source. The Krishna is the all attractive. So the source of all pleasure, the source of happiness is in Krishna. And for some reason or another, for the misuse of our free will, we have turned ourselves into a position where we are now attempting to enjoy separate from the enjoyer. And that is a eternally distressful position until we have the ability to turn ourselves back and go towards Krishna, to go towards the source of all pleasure. And that's when we can really actually overcome the distress. So this requires some intelligence and our intelligence becomes awakened in spiritual life. Somewhere there's a explanation of intelligence or knowledge, which is understanding the difference between matter and spirit and who is the controller of both. And we're asking these questions. When we get a little bit of intelligence, we'll start asking the questions like we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam that are raised by the great saints and teachers like Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami, and then even in other sections of literature like the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or like Sanatan Goswami. He was a very learned materialist, but he had this burning question. Like, he was very well respected in his community, and many people thought he was very intelligent, but in his own mind he knew that he was not very intelligent, and he knew that he didn't have, somehow the intelligence arose in him to question, who am I? Why am I suffering? These are the questions when the intelligence starts to arise, that when we actually ask these questions, who am I? Why am I suffering? Why do I have to grow old? Why do I have to die? From the conditioned state, instead of actually trying to understand these questions, we will ignore this and pretend that, put our head in the sand like ostriches and pretend that this is not going to happen to us. But this is a dull, there's no intelligence there if we're not asking these questions. So the pathway from distress requires first exploring what the cause of this distress is, as we've been outlining here. And so we're understanding this now in this, from the point of everyone is under the full control of the Lord. So the distress and actions that we're getting are under the control and the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And everything that we're doing is being perceived by the Paramatma, but also is being perceived by so many different witnesses. Now, here is a very, if anyone can get this, then you'll get a special bonus prize. But so from the sixth, and I'll give you a couple of clues, but from the sixth canto, first chapter, and it's in the Ajamil pastime, there's 13 witnesses, 13 different witnesses that are seeing all of our activities, that are witnessing all of the activities. Does anyone know what these witnesses are without looking? Probably not. This is a pretty. Anyone have any ideas? Any remembrances of this? The 13 witnesses.
Yes, Prabhu. The 10 directions, they are all continuously watching us.
Yes.
Then the super soul in our heart is
Yes.
continuously watching. Then sky is watching. I do not know what is the last one.
Yes.
Is it the sun and the moon?
Yes, sun and the moon. Yep. That's 5. Yeah. So we also have, so I'll just read it. So it's the sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and the super soul himself all witness the activities of the living entity. So this witnessing, so this is and so in these witnesses, we are being seen for whatever we might, or whatever is being done. Now, this is leading to the calculations, Yamaraj, and the keeping a record of everything. And that's causing our distress. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a big difference between the materialist distress and the devotee's distress. Because the materialist distress in many cases is needless suffering. It's suffering because of ignorance, the ignorance of the lack of understanding of who they are and what the actual goal of life is. And we've pointed out, and we can understand now what the materialists, why they're suffering, and why we are suffering from this point of karma, and we are being witnessed. And eventually we're going to be either gaining the results or getting the distress from whatever activities we have. But once we come into Krishna consciousness, and once we come back under the umbrella or the shelter of Krishna as his children, and we're making efforts and attempts, our distress is actually can be looked at from a couple of different points. Prabhupada has described it where some karma that we have to experience is like when a fan is unplugged, and there's still like a fan is spinning and it's unplugged, and then there's still some energy in the fan that needs to work itself out. So there's one side where there's some aspects of things that might need to be worked out from our karma in the world of, once we come into the position of Krishna consciousness. But whatever it is that we're receiving is a minimized result in terms of distress. And it's usually more so from a position of teaching us or helping us break the attachments that we have to this material world. And it's said multiple places. Srila Prabhupada makes this point in his purports throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, that as a special favor, Krishna will cause perceived distress in the life of a devotee to break his material attachments. And he can remove all the material paraphernalia from our life. And by such actions, the bewildered devotee can become forsaken by relatives, and he comes to his senses again by the mercy of the Lord and is set right to execute his devotional service. So we can understand that from the position of Krishna consciousness, if we're experiencing perceived distress, it's either a minimized result of what we have done in our past, and we should tolerate and accept and continue on in our devotional service and know that we're heading towards the goal. Or on the other side, where if we're experiencing distress, we can also recognize that it is the mercy of Krishna to help us break this attachment, whatever lasting attachments that we have to this material world, thinking that we're going to find satisfaction and enjoyment in these bodies or any of the paraphernalia that's connected to these bodies. So this is what I have today. I could continue to go, but I think there's some points here. If there's any discussion that devotees would like to have in relation to anything that I've said, or anything else in regards to this verse, please speak now. Thank you.
Anybody has anything to add, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhus. Thank you for giving class. My question is how we can practice seeing others, like say if there's a reversal, how do we practice seeing that as an agent of my own karma without wanting to blame them? Like that seems like a strong point, at least in my experience, that there's that propensity to blame them. Like, how could they have done this to me? So how do we really see it that Krishna is working through them as an agent of my own past wrongdoings?
Well, the first thing would be just to keep these points at the forefront of your mind, and keep the point that we are the cause of our own distress. This is a very practical point, and to keep as a meditation. And it's some, of course, it is difficult because it's so visceral in relation to like what we're experiencing with someone else, or we're experiencing this pain in ourselves. And it is a challenge to overcome this way of thinking. So we can have faith and practically catch ourselves in our thinking, because it starts in our thinking. And we can recognize the way that we're thinking about, and let's say control the mind, but control the way that we think. Catch it before we allow it to, drive our actions. Catch the way that we're thinking about what's happening to us or what others are doing to us. And of course, it's not, sometimes we can do it and sometimes we can't. But sometimes we notice if we're doing it and sometimes we don't. But we're gaining strength, and over time we can develop more ability to recognize where we're enhancing or increasing our own suffering by meditating on someone else. I mean, it's simply a matter of stopping it. Just don't do it. But we have to have the intelligence and the awareness to notice and be self-aware enough to notice when we're doing it, which takes practice. So we keep practicing, and over time, gradually, we become more and more aware of when and how we're doing it. And then we just simply stop doing it. We stop blaming others. We stop looking at others as the source of our distress. And we focus in on ourselves, and also compassion for ourselves and for others is helpful in that regard. If anyone else has any points about that, that's what I can say.
Actually, I like how Srila Prabhupada, he actually answers this in the purport, because generally when we see, an agent of our karma, we want to blame them for two reasons. One is that we want to escape the culpability of our previous actions, as you explained. The other is that we actually want to see that person punished. But Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport that the super soul is there, and the system that we have now, the innocent until proven guilty, that's a man-made system. It's a social custom. In the laws of God, as soon as you're guilty, and you will get the punishment. There's no, as you were mentioning, there are these 13 witnesses. They're seeing everything. So it's not that we can get away with anything. So nobody's going to get away with anything. So first off, we don't have to worry about others getting their punishment that they deserve, because they're definitely going to get it. And secondly, we can see that the difficulties that we're going through are those punishments of things that we've done, even if we don't even remember doing them. Right. So philosophically, for both of those reasons, we shouldn't be blaming other people. So just as you pointed out, we take the blame because it was stuff that we've done. And also, since nothing goes unseen or unpunished, then we realize that, okay, this difficulty that I'm going through is because of something that I've done, and there's no way to get away with it. The only thing I can do is practice Krishna consciousness and get rid of the mentality that brought me to this material world, as you mentioned, the misuse of the free will. And so when we can successfully do that, then we can actually get out of the material world. Otherwise, it's just perpetual suffering and blaming people for our suffering and hoping that other people get more punishment for the suffering that we think that they inflicted on us. And it's just an endless cycle. But I like how Srila Prabhupada pointed that out in the purport.
That's very nice. And not to mention then the piece about what we meditate on, we then start to become, right? So our mentality is formed by the object of our meditation. So we're like all those qualities that we see in others. I think what do they call it in like psychology? It's like a projection or something. We're projecting onto others the qualities that we're seeing in ourselves that are that which we don't want to have, or that which we don't like about ourselves. But it's a cycle. So yes.
I also appreciated Srila Prabhupada's expansion of Bhagavad Gita 15:15 in this purport. It's such a often quoted verse, but for different reasons, because there's different aspects of that verse. There's of all the Vedas I am to be known, the compiler of the Vedanta, the knower of the Vedas, but also from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So there's so much in that verse that oftentimes we'll just quote half of it depending on what we're talking about. And so the way Srila Prabhupada breaks it down, he explains that whole verse. It takes a pretty decent amount of that paragraph just expanding on that verse. I really enjoyed that in today's purport as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very insightful. Appreciate it.
Kalpesh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Very, very interesting topic. And I struggle in my life, like, okay, when I completely agree regarding the not to find fault finding on others. That is very appropriate. But because we read philosophy, we understand those qualities. And when particularly the Ramzan is coming up, like tomorrow, I think, and there will be so many animals will be killed. And when we try to just see that people are eating so many animals, and there are so many disturbances are caused. And when we see others that way, that I mean, they are contributing to those disturbances, and in our own mind we think, okay, how can be I, with the mercy of Krishna, how can I be the instrument in trying to rectify those in our own capacity or own strength, in terms of endeavor. We do try to project that on others, and we want to correct that situation, because to make society a better place, civilized, in the present times, our endeavor will be always there, in that direction. And that thought does comes, and sometimes it does comes, and we don't really find a good path to resolve those situation. So like would that be also considered like a, because we wanted to see the good things on others, but now definitely this is not something we want to really say that this is the right thing, because it's a principle. It's not made by man-made system. So when we try to act against those things, what would we say for those, for those kind of things?
You mean, what would we say? Like, what would we say to those who are slaughtering the animals?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, because we will see that way, right? Of course, we'll see it that way. Being in that position that we are not trying to disturb this to our best, we can. I know. I mean, in my own world, in our world, I make 1,000 mistakes, but not this kind of mistake. I for sure, in whatever capacity I know, judging myself on, But when we try to see those kind of things on other, and we wanted to really, I don't want to like become like very soft person at that point, oh, it is okay, and not to, it's okay, you can kill animal, I don't want to start saying, or not saying to myself, it is okay, it is supreme will at that time, that this is going on at the will of the supreme. No, this is not the idea of making things civilized. The change is the part of the evolution on this. So that's how I see it.
So yeah, of course it's difficult to see this, and we want to try to make some sort of change, especially when we see so many innocent animals suffering, or when we see anyone or anything suffering. We want to try to help, but what we can, I would just point to a few things. One is that we should, from what Srila Prabhupada has described, is that those who are inimical or those who are outright envious, we should ignore them. Those who we can make a difference with, who are innocent, we should attempt to try to share this knowledge with. So on one side, if we can try to share, like you do so nicely, share Srila Prabhupada's books with the innocent, so that they don't end up in a position, so they can understand the difference. Whether we can make a difference with those who are already devoutly ready to kill animals based on their religion, that's something we can attempt, but to try our best with people who we think can actually benefit, so that they don't end up being fooled by the knowledge that would have them killing animals. So I mean, it's hard to say what tactics you could do to try to change the animal killers' existing slaughter, but you can know what to do, which is to share Srila Prabhupada's books with those people who are open to them, so that they don't become animal slaughterers. I mean, at least you can start there, lowest hanging fruit. And yeah, I mean, you could maybe try to share the books also with those who are killing the animals, but that might be, I mean, we're already doing that on the street. There's so many people, we're distributing books, and these people are smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, and they're taking Srila Prabhupada's books. Of course, they're eating meat too. They're not killing them in the same way, but I mean, they are, but they're just not personally doing it. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, but
yeah. But it is very hard to judge who is low hanging fruit at that time because we don't know just by having a couple of minutes interaction. And
Well,
I just
if they're willing to take it, then
yes,
a good start.
that's a good start. Right? And I actually, in my experience, this Sunday, I was trying to distribute book, and I was just opposite door to halal meat, where they were like selling halal meat for the festival upcoming, and there were many from the east of the east part of the world. They were trying to buy it from that store, and I was trying to give them the Bhagavad Gita. Some of them took it to be, and somebody also came to me saying that, oh, I bought just meat. I can't touch this book now. So they do in their heart, they know this something they are doing. Somebody also came and told me that I eat meat, but this book will tell you not to eat meat, right? So I told, yeah, I mean, I don't want to tell you what this book will tell. In your heart, God will reveal you what is the right thing. That is the response I try to say. So I see your point here, that we can do those kind of difference, but we do get in that. Like, I don't want to become like soft in saying that. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to see those things. I want to definitely see those things and try to do best in my capacity or my strength, or getting the mercy from Krishna to see, to make this God-made law.
Yeah. Charachandra Prabhu, I think, had.
Yeah.
He might have something to add.
I actually saw that Kaivalya Prabhu unmuted himself as well, so please let him speak first.
Okay, Prabhu, one thing we all can do is pray for those animals, who are going to be slaughtered. So, because people may not understand, our philosophy, and then they say, okay, this is our culture, this is our religion to kill the animal. So at least we can pray so they can get good destination, at least, by chanting Krishna's name for them, Other thing, what we can do is, like Prabhu told, that we give them the book and Bhagavad Gita and those things, but it will be hard for them to understand, unless they read it thoroughly, and but it can be tried, of course, and that will be great job, great help, to those people, those souls, even the human beings who are slaughtering them, like in that day Thanksgiving, so many turkeys are killed here, and all around the world, and we can imagine, how much pain and suffering they may have, but we should just pray for them. That's what I wanted to say, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
And then ultimately, we're trying to change consciousness, not behavior. So, for example, there's a lot of environmentalists these days are becoming vegetarian. But that's not actually a victory for us. In one sense, it is, because there are fewer animals being slaughtered. But it's not a victory for us if the consciousness isn't changing. So if we're still exploiting material nature, and we're still acting according to our false ego, our polluted consciousness, instead of our true self, then we're failing. So just as we see that these people are doing the wrong thing, we can also see in ourselves that we're also doing the wrong thing. We're doing the different wrong thing, but it's in one sense, it's equally bad, because we've turned our back on Krishna and all these different activities that we do. And so whatever we can do, as was already pointed out, whatever we can do to help them change their consciousness, giving them Srila Prabhupada's books, feeding them prasad, having them listen to kirtan, whatever we can do in that regard is good. But we also have to look the other direction. So instead of looking at the people that are all doing all these things wrong, we have to look up in the other direction at the people that are doing things right, better than we are. And then we have to observe that and elevate our own consciousness, right? So we can use their misdeeds to inspire ourselves, because we're also nowhere near perfect, but there are devotees who are much more advanced that we can learn from. So if we focus on elevating our consciousness, then we'll have more tools to help others to elevate their consciousness. So generally, when we see these things, it's a good inspiration. It's a good tool for us to do better for ourselves, to elevate our consciousness, and then in turn we can be more well prepared to help the other ones that we see they're not doing such a great job, if that makes sense. But the consciousness is what we want to change, not necessarily the activity. The activity will change with the consciousness, but the activity can change without changing the consciousness. That's the point. So if we just focus on the external, we may not be actually getting the desired results.
Very nice, Prabhu. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you. Both Prabhus. Very nicely explained.
Prananath, you have your hand up?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just wanted to go back to Max Prabhu's comment or question, where he said, how can we not blame others, about something that happens to us? And I thought I'll just share my personal experience recently, where I felt that I was wrongly accused of something, and at that point in time, it was very hard for me, and I was trying to, find justice, as Charuchandra Prabhu was saying. But when I shared my heart with a very senior Vaishnava, who is my Shiksha Guru, and then I was engaging favorably in Krishna consciousness. Then over a period of time, I realized and experienced that was a wonderful thing to happen to me. It was Krishna's mercy. What at that point in time seemed like so unfair, but it was Krishna's mercy that a lot of wonderful things happened because of that in my life, which I couldn't see at that time. And also by hearing about these wonderful personalities in this Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj, all these great personalities, and also so many senior Vaishnavas sharing their own personal experience, it really helped to convert those feelings of resentment into, more taking it as my own past karma and wishing the opposite person the very best and praying for all success for them rather than, blaming them for anything. So, the other day I was hearing Dhruv Maharaj's pastime, how his stepmother, said so many harsh things to him, and he was so angry. But then at the end, he goes back to her and says that was the best thing to do, because otherwise I wouldn't have gone closer to Krishna and I wouldn't have gotten the darshan of the Lord. So just few points I thought of sharing, that when I confided, with somebody and revealed my heart, and then gradually over a period of time, I was able to realize that, in fact, that was a blessing, and felt more that it was and also was able to let go, and even, in fact, wish the opposite person the very best, and not to blame them. Just few points I wanted to share, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Really thinking from a more broad perspective, it's harder when we're in it, but yes, see. Yes. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, devotees. Thank you for supporting me in this time of not being able to speak so much.
Thank you very much, Sasi Sekhara Prabhu. I think for not being able to speak, you spoke quite a bit. And also thank you to Charu Chandra Prabhu for being there and helping us with the discussion. When I have a situation like this, I tend to panic and I'm asking everybody for everything, not knowing what it is I will be needing. So thank you very much for being supportive there. And thank you very much, devotees. We will meet everybody again tomorrow morning at 7:50 for another morning class.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripasya patitanam pavanebhyo
Krishna Devaya
Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.